Hello. Okay, so this resource is for you if you feel like your neck muscles really burn when you're trying to do any core exercise, especially when you're bringing your upper body forward and maybe off of the ground. Your neck is like burning and you're wondering why your core isn't also burning, or you feel like you could be using your core more efficiently. So our bodies are really smart, and this is true for any movement in general. Like anything that you do, your body is going to use the muscles it feels like it needs to use, or the muscles that it recognizes, in order to perform any movement. So in this case, your body isn't as comfortable using your core muscles in the most efficient way or safe way possible to perform something like a crunch or a sit-up. I'm going to use that as an example just because it's super simple exercise to use for this. The first thing I want to talk about is what's called mind-muscle connection, which is thinking about the muscle that you're using as you are activating it. So for these core exercises, we really want to use our core in the best way possible. So you might have heard before to flex your core as if someone's going to punch you, in order to prepare your core for the ab exercise or any general movement, and that's going to help engage your core in the correct way as you perform the exercise. So I do and I don't agree with this. I think that it allows you to sense your core muscles, but there's better ways that we can prepare our core for the exercise. So what I would recommend doing, we've talked a lot about diaphragmatic breathing, and if you haven't watched my videos on diaphragmatic breathing, I highly recommend that you watch them. So in the academy, I think it's at the end of month 2, you do get a message about the diaphragmatic breathing, but it is also in the introduction resource. So that is a really great video to watch. Diaphragmatic breathing is so cool, and it has to do with way more than exercising. So we're gonna set up with that diaphragmatic breath. So I literally do this every time I do a core exercise. I breathe through my diaphragm. So if your ribs are here, you want them to expand out laterally away from you. And you can use your thumb as a cue to feel your diaphragm moving outward. So it's sitting like this, and when you breathe in through your nose, it's going to expand, which is going to push your rib cage out. So you're going to breathe in through your nose. You're going to feel it expand, and on the exhale, you're going to pretend that you're going to visualize your core here sitting like this, and you're going to bring it together. So you're going to bring it together, and you're going to bring your pelvic floor up. You're going to visualize pulling this up, bringing this down, and wrapping it in like a blanket. So if if you're like wrapping yourself up in a blanket, you're pulling everything in this way, or together, or towards the midline. That's kind of what you're going to visualize. So together and in this way. And so you're going to do that on the exhale. So again, you're going to breathe in, you're going to do that diaphragmatic breath, and then on the exhale, you're going to focus on bringing everything in and together. And then you're going to kind of hold that. So as I'm talking to you right now, I just did that, and I'm kind of holding that tension in my core. And I'm going to breathe through that tension as I do the core exercise. And so that might seem like a lot, like right off the bat. But the more you do it and the more you feel for it, the easier it will be. Even if you're doing something like a bicep curl, you can do that diaphragmatic breath, set your core up, create a nice stable unit before you start your exercise, and you can breathe through that as you're performing the exercise. For core work specifically, that's gonna be the first thing I'm gonna recommend. And the second thing I really want you to be aware of is what's called coning. I'll talk first about what we don't want. So coning is when I was in high school and we would do core work, I would see this. I would see my abs kind of create a little bit of a mountain or a hill, and I'm like, ooh, that's kind of cool. It looks like I'm doing something right. And so it's actually what we want to avoid. It just has to do with the pressure in our abdomen. It's pushing away and against from us, and there's a connective tissue that runs down our midline of our six-pack, the linea alba, and the pressure is kind of pushing into those tissues, and it's creating this like mountain effect. So we want to avoid that. The pressure is going to be off, and we're not creating a really stable unit to work with. And so here, I'm going to show some pictures here of what we want to avoid. And so you see the pressure is off in our stomach and how we're holding our air, which just creates off balances when we're performing the movement. And our tissues in our core aren't really all connected in the correct way to, one, really get that strong core that we're looking for. And this is going to also be really important as we lose our body fat and gain stronger muscles. Engaging our core correctly is going to be a key component in really like putting that edge on how we can really feel our best. So what we can do to avoid that is really diaphragmatic breath that I just talked about. When we're going to engage that correctly and pull all of that together and really think about that when we're coming up, we're going to create a really flat, it's going to look like a flat stomach where there isn't any coning. We feel pressure even on the outsides over here because it's even all the way across our stomach. And so those two things I think are going to be the most important things to know is that diaphragmatic breath and how to set your core up. And then two, just being aware of coning, and if you are coning, really focusing on that diaphragmatic breath and really feeling it out. It's going to take time. It's going to feel a little bit uncomfortable at first. You're probably going to feel like you're not sure what you're feeling for or looking for, and if that's the case, message me. But it will take a little bit of time, but there will be a point where you're like, oh my gosh, I finally feel it. So I hope that was helpful.